Break your anxious attachment. Escape the insecurity loop, stop the constant worry, heal your triggers, and finally feel safe in love. By Daphne Reyes. Introduction. The hidden blueprint of your heart. The room is quiet, but your mind is screaming. It is a cold, heavy feeling in the center of your chest. It feels like you are hanging off the edge of a cliff by your fingernails, and the person you love is the only one who can pull you up. But they aren't reaching for you. In fact, they seem to be walking away. You check your phone. The screen is dark. You check again 30 seconds later. Still dark. You tell yourself to put it down, to breathe, to focus on literally anything else, but your brain won't let you. It is busy building a horror movie where you end up alone forever. This isn't just worry. This is a physical ache, a desperate need for a sign, any sign, that you are still wanted. In 1952, a man named James Robertson walked into a London hospital with a film camera. At that time, hospitals had a very strict rule. Parents were only allowed to visit their children for 1 hour a week. Doctors thought that seeing parents made children upset, so it was better to keep them apart, to keep the wards quiet and clean. They believed that as long as a child was fed and had a clean bed, they were fine. Robertson filmed a 2-year-old girl named Laura. When her mother left, Laura didn't just cry. She went through a terrifying transformation. First, she wailed and threw herself against the bars of her crib. This was protest. She was fighting with every bit of her small body to bring her mother back. When her mother didn't return, Laura became quiet. She didn't look at the nurses. She didn't play with toys. She sat very still, staring at nothing. The doctors thought she was settling in and being a good girl. Robertson's film showed the truth. Laura wasn't fine. She was in a state of deep despair. Her heart had essentially shut down to protect itself from the pain of being left behind. When the film was shown to doctors, it changed everything. It proved that for a human being, especially a small one, being close to a loved one isn't a luxury. It is as vital as the air we breathe. This film was the spark that helped a psychiatrist named John Bowlby define what we now call attachment theory. He realized that we are all born with an invisible tether, a biological pull that keeps us connected to the people who care for us. When that tether feels loose or broken, our brain sends out an emergency signal. For some of us, that signal never quite turns off. The mental noise that never quits. If you are reading this, you likely know exactly what that emergency signal feels like. You might call it being needy or overthinking, but those words don't do justice to the sheer exhaustion of living this way. It is a constant loop of mental noise. You spend your lunch break wondering why your partner's tone sounded off during a 2-minute phone call. You spend your evenings analyzing the punctuation in a text message. If they use a period instead of an exclamation point, your brain treats it like a fire alarm. You find yourself waiting for the other shoe to drop, convinced that even if things are good right now, a breakup is lurking just around the corner. This constant state of high alert is exhausting. It robs you of your sleep, your focus at work, and your ability to actually enjoy the relationship you are fighting so hard to keep. You want to feel safe. You want to be able to put your phone in another room and not feel like you are losing a limb. You want to be the kind of person who can handle a small argument without feeling like the world is ending. Most of all, you want to stop the chase. You often find yourself drawn to people who are a bit distant, people who value their space more than anything else. This creates a painful dance. The more they pull away to find their breath, the harder you pull on the tether to feel safe. You use what psychologists call protest behaviors. You might send 10 texts in a row, or you might try to make them jealous, or you might shut down and act cold, just to see if they will notice and come find you. None of it works the way you want it to. Instead of bringing them closer, these actions often push them further away. You end up feeling ashamed, lonely, and more anxious than when you started. You begin to believe that there is something fundamentally wrong with you, that you are just too much for anyone to handle. The promise of the internal anchor. There is a way out of this loop. You were not born broken, and you are not destined to be a hyper-vigilant tracker for the rest of your life. The anxiety you feel is not a personality flaw. It is a survival mechanism in your brain that is simply doing its job too well. It is trying to protect you from the pain that Laura felt in that hospital crib. The goal of this book is to help you move from being an anxious tracker to becoming what is known as a securely anchored partner. Imagine waking up and not immediately reaching for your phone to see if they texted. Imagine having a partner tell you they need a night to themselves, and instead of feeling a wave of panic, you feel a sense of relief because you have a book you've been wanting to read. Imagine being able to say, "I feel a little insecure right now. Could I get a hug?" instead of picking a fight about the dishes just to get their attention. This transformation is called earned security. It means that even if you didn't grow up in a perfectly stable home, and even if your past relationships were a series of train wrecks, you can literally rewire your brain. You can build an internal anchor, a place of safety inside yourself that doesn't depend on another person's mood, their text habits, or their constant reassurance. By the end of this journey, you will know how to quiet the mental noise and stop the obsessive overanalysis of your relationship. Identify the biological tripwire in your brain and disarm it before it leads to a meltdown. Express your needs clearly and calmly, without using protest behaviors that push people away. Break the cycle of attracting partners who are emotionally unavailable. Regain your sense of self, your hobbies, and your friendships that often get swallowed up by romance. Meet Elena. To understand how this looks in the real world, we need to look at Elena Rodriguez. Elena is 32 years old and a senior marketing manager at a tech startup in Austin, Texas. Elena is a powerhouse. She manages a team of 12, hits every deadline, and is the person everyone turns to when a project is falling apart. She is smart, funny, and incredibly empathetic. But at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, Elena doesn't feel like a powerhouse. She is sitting on the edge of her bed in her minimalist apartment, the blue light of her phone illuminating her face. She is staring at an Instagram screen. 6 months ago, she started dating Mark, a software engineer. Mark is brilliant and kind, but he is also independent. He doesn't like to plan things too far in advance, and he often goes hours, sometimes a whole day, without replying to a text. Elena sent Mark a text at 6 p.m., asking if he wanted to grab dinner on Friday. It is now nearly midnight. No reply. But when she opened Instagram, she saw his status, active now. The knot in Elena's stomach tightens. Her heart starts to race. A familiar heat rises up her neck. If he's active on Instagram, why hasn't he replied to me, she thinks. It takes 5 seconds to type yes or no. He must be losing interest. He's probably talking to someone else. I knew I was being too pushy last week when I asked to leave a toothbrush at his place. She starts to future trip. She imagines the "we need to talk" conversation. She imagines being single at 33 and having to explain to her mother why another relationship failed. She feels a desperate, itchy need to do something, anything, to fix this feeling. She opens their text thread. She types, "Hey, I guess you're too busy for a simple reply. Forget about Friday." Her thumb hovers over the send button. She knows deep down that this text is a mistake. She knows it will make her look crazy or high maintenance. But the pain of the silence is so loud that she feels like she will explode if she doesn't send it. She just wants him to react. She wants him to argue with her, to apologize, to tell her he was just busy. She wants him to prove that she still matters. Elena is caught in the insecurity loop. She is using a protest behavior to try and bridge the gap that Mark's silence created. But as we will see, this action is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Elena's struggle isn't about Mark, and it isn't about Friday night dinner. It is about a blueprint in her heart that was drawn long ago, a blueprint that says love is fragile, people are inconsistent, and you have to fight to keep anyone's attention. The path ahead. We are going to follow Elena as she learns to put down the phone and pick up the tools of self-security. We will see her fail, and we will see her grow. Her story is the story of everyone who has ever felt too much in a world that often feels too little. To help Elena and you, we will look at the work of 3 legendary figures who dedicated their lives to understanding the human heart. First, we will walk with John Bowlby through the streets of London. We will look at his 1944 study of 44 juvenile thieves to understand how our earliest years create the internal working model we use to view the world today. He will show us that our hunger for love is not a weakness, but a biological fact. Next, we will join Mary Ainsworth in the villages of Uganda and the labs of Baltimore. Through her famous strange situation experiment, she will help us diagnose our own behaviors. She will explain why we are often drawn to the exact people who trigger our worst fears, and why intermittent affection is the most addictive drug on earth. Finally, we will look at the life of Eleanor Roosevelt. Though she was one of the most powerful women in history, Eleanor began her life as an anxious child who felt like an ugly duckling. She spent years desperately seeking the approval of her husband and her family. Her journey from a woman who shut down in fear to a woman who possessed total emotional autonomy is the ultimate roadmap for earned security. The Science of Safety. You might be wondering if a book can really change how you feel. You might have tried therapy, or read other books, or spent hours talking to friends, only to find yourself back on the edge of the bed at midnight, staring at a dark phone screen. The difference here is the focus on the nervous system. Anxious attachment is not just a thought problem, it is a body problem. When you feel that panic, your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for survival, has taken over. It has decided that a delayed text message is the same thing as a tiger attacking your camp. You cannot think your way out of a tiger attack. You have to regulate your way out. We will use the internal anchor framework to handle these moments. This involves 1. Somatic tools, learning how to use your breath and your body to tell your brain, we are safe right now. 2. Cognitive reframing, learning to separate the facts, he hasn't texted, from the fiction, he is leaving me. 3. Boundaries, learning that saying no and having your own life is actually the most attractive thing you can do for a relationship. This isn't about playing games or learning how to act secure. It's about becoming secure. It's about healing the part of you that still feels like Laura in that hospital crib, waiting for a mother who isn't coming. It's about becoming your own secure base. Let's begin. The journey from anxious to secure is not a straight line. There will be nights when you still feel the itch to check your partner's social media. There will be days when the mental noise feels a little too loud. But with every page, the tether will feel a little less like a leash and more like a bridge. You are about to stop being a prisoner of your own heart. You are about to discover that the safety you have been chasing in other people has been waiting inside you all along. The phone is still on the bed. The room is still quiet. But you are about to take a deep breath, put the phone in the drawer, and close your eyes. Chapter 1. Mapping the roots of your attachment. If you walk down a quiet street in North London today, you might pass a brick building that looks like any other office. It has clean windows and a small sign. People walk by it with their coffee, checking their phones, heading to work. It is a peaceful place. But in 1944, this area did not feel peaceful. The sky was often gray with smoke. The sound of sirens was common. Inside that building, a man named John Bowlby was looking at a group of boys that everyone else had given up on. These boys were called thieves. They had been caught stealing from shops or homes. In those days, people believed a very simple thing about children. You were either a good kid or a bad kid. If you did bad things, it was because you were born with a bad heart. The fix was usually a stern talk, a cold room, or a life behind bars. But Bowlby didn't believe in bad seeds. He sat in his office, surrounded by stacks of paper and the smell of old books, and he started to ask a different question. He didn't ask what was wrong with these boys. He asked what had happened to them. The myth of the bad seed. Most people think that being anxious or needy in love is just a personality flaw. You might tell yourself that you were born with a worry gene. You might think that if you could just be stronger or less sensitive, the fear of being left behind would go away. This is the great myth of the heart. We think our adult behaviors, like checking a partner's location or panicking when a text goes unreturned, come from nowhere. We think they are just who we are. Bowlby proved this was wrong. He spent months interviewing 44 boys who stole. He also interviewed 44 boys who were troubled but didn't steal. He looked for a pattern. He wasn't looking at their grades or their health. He was looking at their history of love. He found something that shocked the medical world. Out of the boys who seemed to have no feelings for others, the ones who could steal without feeling guilty, nearly all of them had one thing in common. They had been separated from their mothers or caregivers for a long time when they were very small. Some had been in the hospital. Others had been sent away during the war. These boys weren't bad. They were protecting themselves. When a child's invisible tether, the emotional cord that keeps them feeling safe with a parent, is snapped too early or too often, the child's brain makes a choice. It either shuts down to stop the pain, or it stays in a state of high alarm, always watching to see if the next person will leave too. The clinic in the clouds of war. Imagine a young boy named Derek sitting in Bowlby's office in 1944. Derek was only 8 years old, but his face looked tired. He had been caught stealing again and again. When Derek's mother walked him into the room, he didn't look at her. He didn't reach for her hand. To a stranger, Derek looked cold. Bowlby looked into Derek's past. When Derek was a baby, he was sent to live with a foster mother for a few months. Then he went back home. Then he was sent to a hospital where his parents weren't allowed to visit. Each time Derek was moved, he felt a biological tripwire go off. In our brains, we have a tiny part called the amygdala. It is like a smoke alarm. Its only job is to watch for danger. For a baby, the biggest danger in the world isn't a tiger or a fire. The biggest danger is being alone. Without a caregiver, a baby cannot eat or stay warm. So the brain treats being left alone as a life or death emergency. Derek's smoke alarm had been ringing for years. Eventually, the noise was too much. To survive, Derek's brain cut the wire. He stopped trying to connect, because connecting hurt too much. But for many of us, the wire doesn't get cut. Instead, the alarm just gets louder. We become hypervigilant. We learn to watch every face, listen to every tone of voice, and track every movement. We become experts at spotting the moment someone starts to pull away. This isn't because we are crazy. It's because at some point in our early lives, our brain learned that staying close was a matter of survival. The internal map of the world, Bowlby called this the internal working model. Think of it like a GPS map that is programmed into your brain before you even learn to talk. If you grow up with a parent who is always there when you cry, your map says, the world is safe. People are kind. If I need help, someone will come. You grow up to be secure. You don't worry about being left because your map has never shown you a world where people just disappear. But what if your map was drawn differently? What if your caregiver was there one day and gone the next? What if they were loving when they were in a good mood, but cold or angry when they were stressed? Your brain tries to make sense of this. It looks at the map and sees a consistency gap. You learn that love is real, but it is also fragile. You learn that you have to perform or watch closely to make sure the love stays. This map doesn't go away when you turn 18. You carry it into your first date. You carry it into your marriage. When your partner doesn't text back for 3 hours, your adult brain knows they are probably just in a meeting. But your internal working model, that old dusty map from childhood, screams, look, the exit is right there. They are leaving just like the others did. Elena's kitchen, the sound of the phone. Elena Rodriguez sat on a velvet couch in her therapist's office in Austin, Texas. Outside, the sun was hot, but inside she felt a cold shiver. She was talking about Mark, the man she had been dating for 6 months. I don't know why I do it, Elena said, her voice shaking. He didn't call me last night. I knew he was out with his friends. I told myself it was fine. But by 10 o'clock p.m. I was pacing my kitchen. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I ended up calling him 4 times. When he finally answered, I snapped at him. I made him feel like he had done something terrible, and now he's pulling away even more. Elena's therapist asked her to close her eyes and think back. When was the first time you felt that itch in your chest? The feeling that you had to do something to make sure someone was still there. Elena didn't have to think long. She saw herself as a 7-year-old girl. She was standing in a bright yellow kitchen. Her mother was a very successful realtor. She was a supermom who did everything, but she was also always 1 foot out the door. Elena remembered the sound of her mother's work phone. It was a sharp, loud ring. Her mother's face changed. She would stop listening to Elena's story about school. She would hold up one finger, the wait a minute sign, and walk into the other room. Sometimes her mother would come back and be extra sweet, feeling guilty for leaving. She would buy Elena a treat or hug her tight. Other times, the phone call would be stressful, and she would come back irritable and tell Elena to go play in her room. In that yellow kitchen, Elena's brain was drawing its map. The map said, love is inconsistent. You are only important until the phone rings. If you want to keep her attention, you have to be loud or you have to be perfect. Elena realized that she wasn't actually mad at Mark for being with his friends. She was a 7-year-old girl in a yellow kitchen, waiting for her mom to put the phone down. She was trying to bridge the consistency gap with her own anxiety. She thought that if she worried enough, she could keep the people she loved from walking away. The intergenerational echo. This is what psychologists call the intergenerational echo. We don't just learn how to love from our parents. We often inherit their own unhealed maps. If Elena's mother was anxious because her mother was distant, the map gets passed down like an old family recipe. We think we are making our own choices in our relationships, but often we are just following the lines someone else drew for us decades ago. This is why just relaxing doesn't work for an anxious person. Telling someone with an anxious attachment style to calm down is like telling someone in a dark forest to ignore the sound of a growling bear. To your nervous system, the silence from a partner isn't just silence. It is evidence. It is proof that the map was right. Bowlby's study of the 44 Thieves showed that our early bonds are the foundation for everything. If the foundation is shaky, the house will feel like it's leaning, no matter how much you decorate the rooms. But the most important thing Bowlby discovered wasn't just the problem. It was the fact that the map is not permanent. It is made of paper, not stone. The core wound, I am not enough. At the center of every anxious attachment is a core wound. For most, that wound is the belief I am not enough to make them stay. Because the love we received as children was often tied to how we behaved, or because it disappeared without warning, we grew up feeling like love is a prize we have to win. We think that if we were smarter, thinner, quieter, or more helpful, the other person wouldn't feel the need to pull away. This leads to what we call protest behavior. When we feel the invisible tether getting loose, we don't say, I'm feeling a little lonely, could we spend some time together? Instead, we lash out, we pick a fight, we send a mean text, we try to make the other person feel the pain we are feeling. Why? Because any connection is better than no connection. If I can make you angry, at least you are looking at me. If I can make you feel guilty, at least you are thinking about me. We use our anxiety as a tool to try and force the world to be consistent. But as Elena found out with Mark, this usually does the opposite. It pushes people further away, which only proves our core wound was right. It creates a loop that is hard to break. A new way to see the past. If you find yourself nodding along to Elena's story, or if you feel a sting of recognition when you hear about Derek, know this. Your anxiety is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are a survivor. Your brain did exactly what it was supposed to do. It noticed that love was unpredictable, and it built a high-tech security system to protect you. It made you fast, it made you observant. It made you care deeply about connection, because connection was what you lacked. The work of breaking the loop doesn't start with changing your partner. It doesn't even start with changing your behavior. It starts with looking at your map. When you understand that your panic is just an old map trying to lead you through a world that no longer exists, the panic starts to lose its power. You can look at the itch in your chest and say, oh, I know you. You're the yellow kitchen, you're the phone ringing, but I'm not 7 anymore. John Bowlby eventually left that clinic in London. He spent the rest of his life telling the world that we need each other. He proved that wanting to be close to someone isn't weak. It is the most natural thing in the world. We are wired for it. The goal isn't to stop needing people. The goal is to learn that you are a secure base for yourself. You are the one who can finally tell that anxious child inside you that the sirens have stopped. The war is over, and it is okay to let go of the thief's tools. You don't have to steal love anymore. You are allowed to simply have it. As Elena left her session that day, she didn't check her phone. She walked to her car, sat in the driver's seat, and just breathed. She realized she had been running a race for 30 years, trying to catch up to people who were already standing right next to her. For the first time, she wasn't looking at the map. She was just looking at the road ahead. It was long, and it was a little scary. But for the first time, it looked like it might actually lead somewhere new. Chapter 2. Why do we chase the people who pull away? In 1950, a woman named Mary Ainsworth was standing at a crossroads that would change how we understand love forever. She had just moved to London to work with a man named John Bowlby. At the time, most doctors believed something very cold and very wrong. They thought babies only loved their mothers because their mothers fed them. They believed love was just a cupboard reflex. If you put food in the cupboard, the baby would come to the cupboard. That was it. Mary didn't believe it. She saw something deeper happening, but she didn't have the proof yet. She almost missed her chance to find it. Her husband's work was taking them to Uganda, thousands of miles away from the famous labs of London. Most people thought her career was over. They thought she was leaving the real science behind to go to a place where nothing important happened. She went anyway. She packed her notebooks and her curiosity. She spent months sitting on the dirt floors of small huts in Ugandan villages. She watched mothers and their babies for hours, while the sun beat down on the red earth. She was looking for a specific kind of near miss in human connection. Those moments where a baby feels a tiny bit of fear and reaches out. Does the mother reach back? Or does she miss the signal? If Mary had stayed in London, she might have spent her life looking at charts. Instead, she looked at faces. She saw that some babies were calm. Some were very quiet and didn't seem to care if their moms were there. But there was a third group that caught her eye. These babies were always on. They watched their mother's every move. They didn't play with their toys because they were too busy making sure mom wasn't going to walk away. This was the birth of what we now call anxious attachment. Mary realized these babies weren't bad or needy by nature. They were reacting to a pattern. Their mothers weren't mean. They were just inconsistent. Sometimes they were warm and cuddly. Other times they were busy, tired, or just didn't notice the baby was crying. This created a near miss of safety every single day. The baby learned a very stressful lesson. If I want to be safe, I have to be loud. I have to keep my eyes on the exit. I have to chase the person I love, or they might forget I'm here. The magnetism of the maybe. The reason we chase people who pull away as adults is because our brains are still sitting on that dirt floor in Uganda. We are looking for that same inconsistent warmth. It sounds strange to say we look for something that hurts us, but to our brains, the maybe is much more addictive than the yes. Think about a slot machine in a casino. If you pulled the handle and won $1 every single time, you would get bored very fast. You would think, okay, this is a job now. You would probably walk away after 5 minutes. But if you pull the handle and win nothing, then nothing, then nothing, and then suddenly you win $50, your brain goes wild. A chemical called dopamine floods your system. It feels like magic. You think, the big win is coming. I just have to stay at the machine. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement. It is the maybe that keeps us hooked. In the 1950s, a scientist named B.F. Skinner proved this with pigeons. He put a pigeon in a box with a small lever. If the pigeon pressed the lever and got a seed every time, it would only press the lever when it was hungry. But then, Skinner changed the rules. He made it so the lever only gave a seed sometimes. It was random. The pigeon never knew when the food was coming. Do you know what happened? The pigeon went crazy. It stopped doing anything else. It wouldn't sleep. It wouldn't preen its feathers. It just stood there, pecking at the lever thousands of times an hour. It became obsessed with the lever because the reward was uncertain. When you are dating someone who is avoidant, someone who is warm one day and cold the next, you are that pigeon. When they text you back after 3 days of silence, your brain gets a seed. It feels 10 times better than a text from a person who always replies within 10 minutes. You think that feeling is passion or chemistry. In reality, it is just your brain reacting to a slot machine. The chemistry delusion. We often mistake anxiety for love. We meet someone who feels electric. Our hearts race, our stomachs do flips, and we can't stop thinking about them. We tell our friends, I've never felt a spark like this before. Most of the time, that spark isn't love, it's an alarm bell. When you have an anxious attachment style, you are tuned to a very specific frequency. You are looking for someone who feels familiar. If you grew up with a parent who was sometimes there and sometimes not, your brain learned that love feels like a tug of war. If you meet someone who is secure, someone who is honest, consistent, and tells you they like you right away, your brain might actually think they are boring. There is no tug on the rope. There is no mystery to solve. Because there is no anxiety, your brain thinks there is no chemistry. You might say, he's a nice guy, but the spark just isn't there. What you are really saying is, this person doesn't make me feel the familiar pain of wondering if they like me. On the other hand, when you meet an avoidant person, the pull is instant. They might be a little bit distant. They might talk about how they love their independence, or how their ex was too clingy. Immediately, your invisible tether gets tight. Your brain says, aha, here is a lever I have to peck. If I can just get this person to love me, it will prove I am worthy. This is the chemistry delusion. We chase the people who pull away because the chase itself feels like the most important thing in the world. We think that if we finally catch them, the anxiety will stop and we will finally be happy. But the truth is that the chase is what's keeping the relationship alive. If they actually stopped and turned around to give us everything we wanted, we might not even know what to do with it.